No, Sean and right away.
I know, I saw it.
Someone on the south side.
So we're going to get going because we're a little behind schedule, I guess. So my name is John Perry. I'm the VP Hockey Ops for Minnesota Hockey. And thanks for coming out today, this beautiful day. We finally closed the skylight so you couldn't see it. It's actually raining out. So you don't want to jump up and leave, obviously. We're going to do a panel today on just hot topics. And hopefully get through that and hopefully have a little time for question and answer. So we're going to have Dr. Ann Moore talk first. Ann works with a TRIA clinic and active in all sports medicine right now. And she's going to talk about early specialization in sports and the dangers of it, concussion protocol, and epidemiology for some of the injuries we're seeing in women's. Right next to her is Brooke White. Brooke is a high school coach at Cretin-Durham Hall, one of the original Whitecaps champions. And comes from a rich hockey family. I didn't realize this, but her grandma coached hockey for 30 years. So, yes.
Field hockey.
Yep. So, and she is also a big part of our HB process in District 6, has coached our HB Spring and our Tier 1 programs. And we just brought her on last year as our ADM girls head coach. And the thing I like about Brooke is just the enthusiasm she brings to the job. It's contagious. So, and then right next to Ann is Sean Goldsworthy. Sean is the high school coach at Minnetonka, former grad from Minnetonka, and went on to play at St. Olaf, and then a couple of years in the CHL, and then came back to coach at St. Olaf for a number of years. And so he's come back to both his alma maters, and now is a coach at Minnetonka High School Hockey Champions last year. And so doing a great job, and just been around and really has a good perspective on hockey itself. And then down at the end is Dan Jablonic. Dan is with USA Hockey, ADM Director for them. He's Blaine, Minnesota product, and did a little time in the USHL, and then went to UMD and graduated from UMD. And did a lot of international play with USA Hockey, and went to Sweden, did some coaching in Sweden too, and then came back to USA Hockey. So another very enthusiastic person. So there's a lot of passion up here, and so I don't want to spend much more time. I just want to get things kicked off, and so I'm going to start with our guest, Dr. Ann Moore from TRIA, and she's going to talk about the subjects that I mentioned.
So thanks for having all of us here today. The issue of sports specialization in kids has become a very hot topic, and there's a lot of push between the formal organizations in medicine, the American Academy for Pediatrics, American Medical College of Sports Medicine, and then the American Orthopaedic Sports Medicine committees that have said we just really need to start looking at this across all sports. So when we talk about sports specialization and it being early, it's when kids are specializing in one sport at the exclusion of others before the age of 14, and including activities around that sport more than 28 hours a week. But we're seeing more and more of that, especially in kids 9, 10 years old that are really committing to those hours and specific only at the exclusion of other sports very early. There are some risks associated with it. Clearly, there's a risk of injury. What happens is if you're using the same muscle groups over and over again, you're prone to more injuries. It's kind of the same reason behind that's why we rotate tires on a car. It's to just use other muscle groups. And we found that kids that do other sports have developed more skill sets that they can bring. So sports like lacrosse, and that's a perfect crossover sport for hockey. It's the same kind of play, motion, moving through other players, positioning, all that. I mean, that's a great spring sport for hockey players to consider. The other thing is that kids do get burned out when they're doing the same sport again and again. And a lot of it is not just that they get fatigued or tired or bored, but it's that if they're doing the same sport for so many years, what happens is that they end up having less autonomy in the decision-making of how much time they're investing in the sport, and more decisions get made by others about what they do. So that for kids can end up causing burnout. So I'm just going through notes, so I hope you don't mind, because I usually will use some kind of PowerPoint. But so the other thing is that most sports don't really require early sports specialization. The one exception might be gymnastics. That's the one sport we found that, you know, trying to pick up gymnastics at age 9, 10, 11, 12 is just too late. But other sports, it's certainly not too late to be, well, I mean, it's clearly with hockey, you still need to have a skill set of skating, but the exception to where we say, well, you might need to specialize earlier, that would be gymnastics. So we always talk about in sports, you know, especially hockey, and I know this has been one of the rule changes about amount of practices versus games, and the importance of really developing skills for players versus having them engage in gameplay, even though that seems to be funner and parents like it better because they get to see their friends more. But can't emphasize it more enough, the importance of developing skill sets, and that comes just with practicing. So there's a couple of figures I wanted to kind of toss out when I was doing some lit review on this, and is that when we looked at the Super Bowl players from Super Bowl 51, 87% of those players were playing in multiple sports in high school. So if they're making it to the Super Bowl level, and you look back and say, what did you do in high school? They were all multiple sport, or 87% were multiple sport athletes. And then when you looked at the NCAA football players in 2016, 100% of those people that won awards, and that included the 5 Heisman Trophy winners or nominees, 100% of those were all multiple sport athletes during their early years, and at least up until 12, 13. So if they can do that and still make it to the pro level and the Super Bowl level, I think the same thing could be said of hockey players. When there was a study that looked at what's the strongest influence for kids in terms of deciding whether to be a multi-sport athlete and the intensity they play, and they found that parents really have the most influence in terms of the initiation of sport and guiding them to what sport they end up choosing. Hence, you know, parents guiding their kids to play hockey, but it was the coaches who really had more influence on the decision of how intense that player was. So you all as coaches really have dictate or help the kids' decisions and molding about how intense they want to be about this sport. So that's where I think you have to be aware of your influence. The American Orthopaedic Sports Medicine Society did a research review of college athletes, that's D1 and D3, and they found that 88% of those sports or athletes participated in more than one sport through their childhood years. So again, 88% of NCAA athletes are shown to participate in more than one sport up into their early teen years. That should be something that we're pushing for. So there's a really interesting study that just came out in January of this last year. It came out of Penn State, and what they did was look at they queried NHL players and NCAA players, D1 and D3. And they looked at what was the mean age of when kids started hockey, and these were guys, and when was the mean age of when they specialized. So the mean age of starting skating was 4.5 years. So they're all starting pretty young. But the specialization was 14.3 years. So that was the average. So these pro NHL and NCAA players, when they look back, they really were not specialized until age 14 as a mean. And that means that some of them didn't specialize till even 15 or 16. So again, if players can make it to the NHL and still play a couple sports in their youth years, I think that's what we have to really focus on. And two more common sports that these athletes were playing, in addition to hockey, was soccer and baseball. When they look back at this group too, only 22%, they asked NHL players, what would you tell your kids? Only 22% of NHL players said that they would encourage their kids to specialize in sports early. So, you know, it's hard to break the drive and the push in the parents, but we were talking about this earlier. We have to gain perspective on this because we are doing our kids a disservice. And I think there's about, here's the other point I think too. We have to think about what happens when kids get cut. So, at the high school level, there's junior goal, but when kids get cut from hockey as a 10-year-old, we really, I think, have to come up with better plan and options for them to continue to play hockey. And that's on the onus of the communities to develop just, whether it's just, informal skating or something beyond, the C-level players that are getting cut. We still have to provide hockey options for kids that are getting cut. So I think that kind of summarizes my ideas about sports specialization. Do you want me to keep rolling?
Yeah, but if you would roll into the concussion protocol, and
Yeah.
we'll have Brooke talk about things that she's doing.
Okay, good. We're really, when I look back, I just got an email about a kid that I treated for a concussion 5 years ago, a hockey player, and I got an email from his mom this week. What we're doing even now versus 2 or 3 years ago is just light years. We just keep making significant progress. There's a lot of questions about chronic encephalopathy, traumatic encephalopathy, and is that related to sports, contact sports. We still don't have an absolute causal relationship. There seems to be a correlation between traumatic injury to the head, especially in boxers, more so in football players. But there's no correlation right now that we can say there's a direct causation. So with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, there's 2 things that we find with that. And one is that they have neurofibrillary tangles in their brain, and then there's a tau protein that we find. The only way to diagnose CTE, that's chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is on autopsy. So we can't do a test, we can't do an MRI, so we have to wait until someone dies and then we look at their brain. And even now, when you're comparing coroners, there's a difference between how they are diagnosing this. So a lot of parents are concerned about this, and we can't give them a solid answer at this point. But we can say repetitive is not a good thing, and that's why we've made changes about checking, and I think that has been a good decision. Kids can develop checking skills as they roll along. We all know that the more exposure to head injuries, the more chance there is for concussion. The more hits you take, the more susceptible you are to getting concussion. We can delay that and still develop their skills during that those couple of years. I think that's a good idea.
And fair play pretty much dovetails right into that.
Yeah,
Right.
yep. So again, the changes that have been made have been pivotal in this, and I just told you I was on the text with Jack Jablonic today. I still take care of him, and we just don't want injuries that are unnecessary. These things are preventable, and that's the whole key of teaching kids how to check right, head up, going into the boards. All those things are important to avoid these more serious injuries.
Thanks, Ann. As leaders in your association, that is something we just cannot look at. It's not the old days where I got dinged. You have the responsibility to make sure these players are not going back on the ice following the concussion protocol, because you just never know. And it's an easy thing to go through, and we're not racing. This is more of a marathon. We're developing kids and training, and it shouldn't be a big hurry. I know Sean's going to speak a little bit to that. But one of the things that I'm encouraged, and we got a lot of questions and wanting us to do a little bit more training with the girls because of the amount of concussions they were having. So I asked Brooke if she would start looking at some of the things we're doing with the boys, with the checking clinics, body contact more than anything. As we redefine the word, I don't think we'll change the word, but we can redefine it. So, Brooke, what are some of the things that you're doing with the clinics? And these are things that you as associations can have her team come out and work with you.
Yeah. I know for me, I started off playing hockey with the guys because there was no girls hockey for me to play. So at a young age, the skating development, body awareness, being strong on my edges, things like that were really of importance. And I think now as the girls game has evolved and we have so many girls playing hockey and women playing hockey, it's just unbelievable. But there's something, coaching high school hockey, that we notice, and even at the younger ages, you just notice that their body awareness and their stability on the ice, and how to actually take a hit, you know, and there's body contact. I mean, at our level, if you've watched, you know, a Whitecaps game or a USA or anything like that, it gets pretty aggressive. So I think what we've done, and I'm really excited to be, you know, in the position to be able to go out and do clinics and, you know, work with the coaches and work with the girls on how to, again, how to be stable on your skates. I don't know if all of you are working on edge work and skating and things like that, that for girls at least is really the foundation, and anyone is the foundation to being able to withstand any sort of contact. So working with the girls with that, we actually just did a body contact clinic last week, and it was great. It was a 2-hour clinic. We started off with more fundamentals, more just getting down in that low position, knee bend, posture, everything like that. Then the second hour, we got more into the actual how to pin, how to angle, how to actually, when they're, you know, we're racing for a puck, how to, again, in women's hockey, girls hockey, it's about, you know, protecting the puck. So how to utilize your body in protecting the puck. And all those things are really, really important, and be able to show them how to actually pin, holding. So a lot of people come in to, we noticed this when we kind of had them demonstrate and do it, they came in with 2 hands on their stick, you know, gut reaction, you come in, you're getting, you know, checked, you're getting hit, 2 hands like this, we're gonna get a penalty, right? So just being able to teach the girls how to keep 1 hand on your stick, you know, as you go in, how to physically pin, and how to, that space, you know, in amongst the boards, which is so dangerous, which you see, you know, I coached at Crittenden Hall, and we had 3 concussions, you know, throughout the season. And once you get concussions, you're more susceptible to them as well. And that's something that you see, just being able to protect yourself closer to the boards, how to do that as well. So I think the clinic went over well. We want to do more and be able to see them implement them. I know the second hour we came back and we got into more of the station work. They actually were implementing what we just taught them. So there's sponges, you know, at that age it was the 8, 10, and 12 U that we were coaching, and you could see from, you know, that first hour and the first sessions that we did to the second, where we actually implemented them in game-like situations where, you know, they're angling, coming up the boards and being able to angle. Not a lot of girls know how to do that. And I think, who here is coaching girls? Okay, fair amount. Question for you, do you work on any of that?
I do. I teach them the proper angling,
Yep.
open ice angling, and then angle trap.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know, ways to keep it safe, because they will literally look at you and say, well, how do I do that? Well, it's simple. Look at the shoulder blade. You watch that shoulder
Yep.
blade and take away space.
Yep.
Eventually, now at the D, you step up, slow it down,
Yep.
reel them in. One of you
Yeah.
take the body, one of you take the puck. You know, it's pretty simple, but you cannot go head on with somebody and think you're going to have any success.
Yeah. Yeah. So other people, I mean, it's out there, and there's a lot of, obviously, men and women coaching girls at that level. I think it's really, really important to be able to teach that, because I know, you know, coming in to coaching at Cretin, they had trouble. There was a lot of airplane turns, and, you know, we all know that, no stops and starts, but angling in open ice and neutral zone and things like that, which had no clue. So it's important to catch them at the younger ages, so that as they get into more, you know, competitive situations, faster, stronger, playing against faster and stronger ladies, they're able to protect themselves to prevent a lot of those injuries. So.
I know one, go ahead.
And I was going to say, at the younger level, so my daughter is moving from 8U to 10U. Her favorite drill we call bull in the china shop, and it's just to get them okay to touch each other, because the girls don't they apologize if they bump into someone on the ice. Like, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to say you're sorry.
Yeah.
And so that her entire team, that's their favorite drill. They beg to play that drill, and basically we just, one girl has a stick, the other girl doesn't, and the girl without the stick, your job is to get the puck. How do you angle them away and get the puck out of a really confined space?
Yeah.
And now, and then seeing that kind of evolve into the game, like, oh, I can touch someone, like getting them used to just contacting another person, especially on the girl side, because the boys will tackle anyone at any point in time with no problem.
Yeah.
But, you know, having some fun games like that where they don't realize that they're working on it,
Yeah.
I found that the younger level is the most successful.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You know, I heard in some of the sessions I just listened in, you know, what, they asked what Minnesota hockey could do for you. This is one of those cases, whether it's boys or girls, where you can come out and do a session of 2 hours and make an immediate impact on your players and get immediate results and have something to work on. So they're just showing the best practices. So again, the boys have a team of 30, Brooke's got a team of 20, so it's a great tool for you to use with your players and for not seeing the same coaches doing the drill that they like to do, but now having maybe a girl from the University of Minnesota, a woman from the Whitecaps, something like that, to reinforce what you're teaching. So that's one of the things I think is really powerful about the clinics, is just reinforcing what you're doing and saying, and so they say, you know, our coach does it right.
Yeah, and to your point in the other room, just about how to get other women out coaching, I think that's an integral part too, being able to come out and show women at, you know, a higher level, to be able to kind of give them an example and talk to them and ask questions and be able to help them too, so we get more women involved in coaching as well.
What other types of clinics are you running besides just the body camp?
So we're doing a power skating clinic, scoring, body contact. We've got a summer camp in June, end of June, Gold Rush, which we have some of the Olympians that are going to be coming on as well. So we're trying to get as many as we can, and obviously want to branch out to the communities as well. So.
How about more like train the trainer type clinics?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we, again, I love the discussion inside the small groups, and that was one common theme, to be able to get out and help coach the coaches and that sort of thing.
Desperately needed.
Yeah, I
Train the
agree.
trainer.
Yep.
And I think that's what happens during these clinics too, is you have someone else out there and they can train someone if it's a new coach or whatever, to show them the different things, because there's nothing worse than having a coach out there showing the wrong technique for a year. So that dovetails into it, and as I mentioned in one of the other tables, that if you needed someone to come out and talk with the parents and educate them too, it's another thing that they can also do. And I know Mike, I know that Wes has done that before at different associations, correct?
Yeah, Wes probably does most of it, but we have a handful of guys that are also excellent handful of trainers that we lean on as well.
So it's a great tool, and as I mentioned in the hockey director committee, you have one in your district, and you should be contacting all your hockey director committees and the associations. Our goal is to drive everything down to the lower associations, because when Tom said, "What did you first know about Minnesota hockey?" and I went, "Who?" I mean, I lived in my world of mice, and then I lived in the world of my association. Then I went to a district tournament. Oh, what's the district? So we need to create a better awareness of who we are, what we offer, and what USA Hockey offers, because there's a plethora of knowledge out there that's right at your hands. So,
John, what age can we start offering body contact clinics for either girls or boys?
Mike, what do you see?
Well, I'd like to hear Dan chime in on this too. I mean, I know Guy Gosselin will run body contact clinics and practices for 12U and Pee Wee quite often. And really, with Pee Wee coaches and 12U coaches should be working on these things in practice weekly as well. So it's all of a sudden not this stark, change or something in bands. So that's something for sure. And you can even do, things at a squirt practice or 10U practice that lend themselves to body contact. And
We
things like that.
use stuff at 800.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We use stuff at Mike's.
Mike's.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
Like teach them, and you got them there, like teach them at their first time on the ice, like how to angle, like.
An angle.
Right.
That's the time to hit is that, you get the 8 and under starting to do it.
I think you hit the nail right on the head, right? You know, my grandson plays mites for the first year, and that's what they were teaching. Teaching it's okay to bump into each other and fall.
And that's the difference between
Well,
body
the
contact.
reality is if you do small games, if you do small area games, you're gonna have body contact.
Well, there's a difference between body contact and checking.
Right. We're talking about body contact. But if you take a bunch of mice, they can be 6-year-olds, and you put them in small area games and smaller and smaller and smaller, they're gonna bump into each other. Then as a coach, you watch and you go, yeah, it's probably time for me to maybe talk about.
So our first couple practices, we actually hope that there's some like full-on checking, because then we'll stop it, bring everyone over, everyone takes a knee, and the 2 coaches then show what they're doing to each other, and we stop it right there. And then by week 3, week 4, it's all angling, and there's none of that head-on anymore.
I think at that age, I have 2 sons, 6 and 8, and they are aggressive, and they watch NHL, and they watch guys just, hitting each other. And I think it's important at the younger age, they know that they're gonna go and bump and they wanna do that, but I think it's important to teach them how.
Right.
Because then, now they're safe about it, and they understand when they go up, oh, I think it's fun, hey, I see his back, I'm gonna just, then you teach them, no, you can't do that, and so I think that's really important to.
Yeah, and the reason I asked you is, I think a lot of times you're dealing with backwards when it comes to physical development, because they're not gonna check and tell Banners if they're boys, we wait. But, and I want your opinion on this, because I don't wanna, guide our people wrong. I feel physical development happens earlier, physical awareness, so it's not a conceptual thing we're talking about, where we're accelerating the development of what they can't handle for the brain. It's a physical awareness, so we actually should be teaching it at a much earlier age. Is that accurate?
I agree.
Yep.
Thank you.
One thing I'll just add a little bit on this, it's a cultural shift. I mean, we spend a lot of time with our staff, with the ADM staff, USA Hockey, discussing these at our winter meetings, and now there's even subcommittees on, before you teach any type of skill, you have to look at, obviously, player safety, and you talked about that, where it all starts with. So it's something that we have to get in that mindset of really defining, okay, body contact essentially starts at the intro to the game, right? 6U, 8U, there's a lot of it we talk about in small area games as you move through. And I think that, sometimes when we start talking, when we look at it from 8U to, girls and women's hockey, there's arguably more contact in those games than there is in the high school game. And it's something that we have to get into that mindset, understanding what the real goal of it is, to make sure that it's not the old school of essentially, hey, separate the person from the puck, okay? It's to gain possession, maintain possession as efficiently and as quickly as you can, so you can go and play offense. And that kind of mindset that we have to have has to be on a daily basis with your coaches and leaders in your associations, that we're doing the right things for our kids. I mean, you look at our game now, it's unbelievable, the NHL, and you see what's going on. I mean, how they're using the contact to their advantage. It's so fast now that the old days of trying to blow guys up, if you're out of the play, it doesn't work, okay? It's so quick, so we have to make sure that we're teaching today's game with the safety component in there to really understand what's going on. And it's a big initiative right now too, because it's not only gonna take the people in the room here, it's gonna take the leaders from Minnesota Hockey, from the parents to educate, and then that's the initiative to kind of move forward of what we need to do with this hot topic, and continue, so we make sure we're teaching the proper techniques. I love the question, when to start it. Hey, the earlier the better. I think we've gotten away from that, because a 14, our 12U coach is like, I don't need to teach that, because they're gonna get that at 14U, and then they're focusing on more tactics. Well, that's wrong. We want you to teach checking essentially at 12U, body contact at the early ages, so the kids, all of a sudden it's not such a shock factor when they get up into that age group, where we can move forward. So it's something right now from USA Hockey, we're not looking to change the rules. A lot of the rules are there. We're looking for the officials to get on board and make sure that we call the rules the right way to protect those players, and kind of move forward that way together, because a lot of it's already in the rule book the way it is. We're just not emphasizing those. So it's a kind of refocus on those points of emphasis as we move forward to really service the player on the safety component, number one. Secondly, on the skill side of it, so we can give them the proper skills to succeed at that next age group.
It's a great point. I hear the old adage, well, finish your check. I don't remember reading that in any book, finishing your check. But I really like what you're talking about, even down to the mite level. If they do something, stop play, sit down. Here's the reason why we don't do it. Our model is to separate and gain control of the puck. A blow-up hit is no good for anybody because you're out of the play. The other player's out of the play, and you probably lost possession of the puck.
One other thing that we do is we also flip it and teach how to avoid contact. So when the puck gets chipped in and you're going to pick it up, how do you look over your shoulders, go this way, and then go the other way, and then you avoid it altogether? So we teach the offensive side of it.
Ice awareness, I mean, we talked about it over here, contact, confidence, all for these kids. I mean, our game's all about confidence. If you teach them the right skills that they can progress through, it's gonna be that much easier for them. So then they won't have this anxiety of, oh my gosh, like this is what's gonna go on. It's already been incorporated year after year that we're teaching the right things, that it's gonna make it more of a seamless transition for that player to really succeed.
So I had talked to Sean last week, and everything we're talking about, we always talk about patience, and so I wanted him to talk about having patience in the game and trust in the process. And he was more than happy to talk about that. So
He's the most high-strung guy we know. Patience, come on.
We're going to turn it over to him.
I'll just finalize one thing as I'm listening to all these super intelligent people. But I think we're in the room talking right now about body contact or checking or the ability. It's actually a skill set. So if you talk to really high-end coaches, whether it's college or high school guys, if your deficiency's in skating, you get a skating drill. If it's in shooting, you do a shooting drill. If your deficiency's in body contact, then you got to implement it into your skill-based practices. You got to put some type of contact in. So I know we take the safety angle all the time, we're trying to drive it and drive it and drive it, but really the bridge is implementing it into a practice, right? That's the implementation model. You got to convince your coaches that it's a really important skill. That's what you got to do. The kids that can handle contact better and rub off each other and puck protect or angle better or take the puck away are better players. They just are. They're better. They're going to advance faster. So if you take that approach, now you're going to drive it into the practice easier than taking this, well, I guess we have one more station, let's do body contact because we have to from the safety model. Or how about we take it from it's probably more important because some of these kids are going to have more body contact in the game than shots on net. That's just my 2 cents. So, Graham, you and I are nodding our heads because we're seeing it. We're seeing kids go through it. So, there's a lot of kids that are super skilled that can't handle contact. They just never advance. So maybe drive it that way. John asked me to talk about trust in the process. So, kind of switching gears a little bit, or I don't know how I'm going to tie it in. I'm not that smart. But
I think you are.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, as John kind of noted, I went back to my original alma mater, which was my high school program, and eventually I think I'll phase into my elementary school at some point before that if they won't kick me out. But our president here is Jimmy Van Bergen from Minnetonka as well, so Jimmy and I know each other, and we got in some conversations. When I was looking at the position and getting back home, I call it home, when I was looking at, I had to get a lot of data points. I was trying to gather information. And the number one thing stressing everybody else, out at home, parents of players, was there's a lot of fear of not being able to keep up with the development model. That I had to sign my kid up for X, Y, and Z, and they overlap. So what you're doing is basically increasing time and money. And my analogy is it's like crack cocaine for adults. You throw time and money into something, and you elevate the fear factor, and then everybody gets all wired up, and then now we have relationships breaking down, your culture of your program gets destroyed, and then everybody's now suddenly individually working in silos rather than working together as a unit. We're fighting a lot of that stuff because, the privatized business of hockey is driving the fear factor that if you don't sign up for this or your kid, you're going to fall behind. When in reality, all the information that you can get from Dan or from John or from Glenn, Twiggy, and you can grab that information actually, technically, as And just to point it out, with whether it's high-end kids or college kids, you know, I'm glad you mentioned Division III as well, because that's hard to get to as well. But they're telling you they need to specialize till you're 14 anyways. What's the peak height velocity? It's one of the best slides that USA Hockey has. That's when you can actually implement the 10,000-hour rule. So most of these athletes will tell you that. I always laugh when we talk about NHL players. They're just pro athletes. They'd be pro at a lot of stuff. They're just really good athletes. So, but if we're just talking about high school kids, they'll tell you the same thing. You don't really need to specialize till right on the onset of puberty. That's the peak height velocity. Some kids a little bit earlier, girls a little bit earlier than boys, but the reality is, so we got to talk some sense into people with some serious data points and say, listen, you don't need to sign up for hockey year-round if you are 10 or 12. But then your challenge is, how do you provide enough programs, resources in the winter season so they don't feel like they have to play spring hockey and fall hockey and turn it into a 10-month season. So that's really where we got to bridge it together. How do you become more efficient? I really think if you can get somebody in your program, that's where I feel like I come in as a high school coach. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I have enough experience of doing things the wrong way where I can say, what we are doing is we're actually creating a fear factor, and we're actually separating ourselves, creating too much toxic behavior, spending way too much money and time, and we're actually going away from what we really are set out to do. So that's when I started talking about trusting the process. And we just stumbled on that, by the way, John. I kept talking to our parents, I kept talking to our players, and one of the moms said, well, we need a slogan for this year, because everybody needs a slogan and a t-shirt, right? So I said, well, I don't even know what to say. And she goes, you know, you always talk about trusting the process, Sean, why don't we just use that? And suddenly the kids bought into it, and they were really like, okay, I don't need to sign up for X, Y, and Z, or make the national camp and go forward and get on that. That might be a good thing. That might be the next month, might be a good break for your kid if you don't make the national camp. Those are good positive things. So trusting the process and your development, physically, mentally, emotionally, cognitively, all those different pieces come into it.
So we're at a point where we're trying to get kind of the I'm going to say late starters at the age of 8, where, from my opinion, if you've never skated before, if you don't do some of those extra things, I'm not saying you're going to the national camp or anything like that, but how do you help those players catch up from a pure hockey skill development thing? Because, I mean, it's not like soccer. You don't know how to skate. I mean, soccer, everyone knows how to run for the most part. So then, with that mindset, how do you bridge that gap with those late starters who need some of that extra skill development outside of the core season? Like, where's that middle ground?
Yeah, well, I think that's the big question. If you can answer that, you're going to write a book and you're going to...
It's open
Yeah,
ice.
solve it.
I think it's okay to,
It's open ice.
Yep.
kids learning how to skate and getting ready for their first season or maybe these plays, it's okay to send them to learn to skate program in the summer or things like, or just send them to open ice, open skate at the local arena.
Yeah.
But I don't think you want to put them into a AAA full summer program just to get caught up, because I think they'll fall more behind doing that.
For sure. Dan's probably got the best answer for this.
I don't know about that, but I think that it's crucial. It just shows you every age that you go up to that ice utilization and efficiency in your practices are key. So I mean, if you're starting out at 6, 8U, you got to build in those foundation skills of skating, of essentially puck control, so kids are capable and confident on their skates when they leave essentially that 8U and get into that 10U a little bit. So it really puts an emphasis on, hey, what are your coaches doing at those age levels where those progressions are being met?
And
there's-
also
go
look
ahead.
into, like, so in Hastings, my 4th grade class from the girls' side, I have 7. I have 32 second graders. So that shows you how low so I'm trying to get second year 10U players.
Yeah.
So if I throw a second year 10U player in, even with my first year 10U players who've been skating since they were 4, like, there's a huge skill development. And so it's challenging. It's always challenging as a coach to the tops and bottoms of any level. That doesn't change. But then when you introduce someone to a level who rightfully so, I mean, development-wise should be in the Might U program, but age-wise,
Yeah.
I need 12U, that's
And I
that's where I
think the
struggle.
bigger picture too is looking at this and supplementing it in ways that you don't have to run off and do, you know,
Right.
5 summer hockey camps. But it's crucial that you build in the off-ice component too. There's a lot of different things that you can do off-ice. Because you gotta remember, we're not just building hockey players, we're trying to build the athlete first more than anything. So that's gonna separate that gap while you're developing those athleticism skills, that's gonna transfer onto the ice. And I know it's easier said than done, but you gotta build those kind of things. So if you see certain areas that those players are deficient in, you have to make sure like, hey, here's some things that we can do that to make that player a little bit easier and have that confidence.
I have one example. I know a couple people have the same things. So everybody, like, we're blessed at Minnetonka because we have a lot of numbers, right? We have a lot of numbers, so we can get it into likability groups. We have 4 groups of mites, Jimmy. So we
Yeah,
have mite
right.
4s, mite 3s, mite 2s. So a kid that's just learning to skate, who might be a year older, can be with the mite 1s and catch up and accelerate. I get it, we're at Minnetonka, but you gotta remember, I lived in Northfield for 12 years. Okay, so my daughter played in 2 state tournaments in Class A. One of her teammates started skating at 11. Okay, so what we were able to do in Northfield is we actually isolated 1 hour of ice a week in the association for first-year skaters. And we put a coach in there just to work on skating. So it's gender open, it's age open. There were kids there. Actually, there was even some high school boys going there going, well, you're working on power skating, and I gotta get better. Can I jump out there? Yeah, you can. So you end up having about 25 kids out there from 16 to 6. And that girl caught up, so we were able to add extra ice time into that. And it's also the beauty that is, at the 12U practice she was a part of, we didn't have to designate one coach just to work with her. Because nothing's more difficult, if you talk to any coach here, is you're out there with 20 kids and the spectrum of ability is a AAA kid who's flying to Toronto next month in this group, and then a kid that walks in with a box of skates and drops it on the locker room floor and goes, I don't even know how to put them on. Like, that's really difficult. I want nothing to do with that. As experienced as I am, I'm awful at that. I need the kids to be as similar as possible. I need that homogeneous group, right? I need that group together.
I mean, if you have more.
So that's one solve. That would be the solve, I would say. I saw Josh kind of picking his head up at
Well, I
Maple
was just
Grove.
gonna bring up that, you know, you have to also look at it and say, well, am I trying to catch these first years up in the next year? Or
Right.
can I wait 3 or 4 years?
It's not merit, it's
What level do I gotta get them to be functional, and trust the process that they're gonna get there eventually. You know, if we drop a couple U8, U10 games because they're not up to par, who cares? We'll still get freezies afterwards. We'll be fine.
I want to have Dan speak to part of the training part of it. He's been able to get over to Sweden and Finland and observe what they're doing over there, and maybe, you know, what you observed over there, what they're talking about. We talk about having patience. I remember your comment at the director's conference as well. We talk about it, they live it.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, you know, before I answer that question, I just want to have you guys recognize it. So I'm very fortunate in my role with USA Hockey that I get to travel the country and the world, and, you know, just finished up a developmental exchange with the Finnish Ice Hockey Federation. And I want to let you guys know in Minnesota hockey how pure it is. And that is something that, I hope something that you cherish as we travel the country and we see different areas. There's so much good going on here, so as we discuss this, like anything else, we want to be, Dave mentioned it earlier, how we can be world leading. It's the same kind of thing as we're coming through today, how we can develop and kind of push that envelope to get that much better, because we're doing so many good things here right now, but we got to find ways to, like, how can we raise the bar just a little bit more, that every player is getting that experience across the board, not just the so-called elites, because we don't know what that is until the end game, and just make it more about that experience. But to answer that question a little bit more, they really put a focus on, so the Finns, I spent 10 days over there, and it was really interesting. By the 4th day, a colleague of mine, Richie Hansen, was with me. We were looking like, what's different in these rinks that we don't have in our rink? Well, first of all, you walk through the lobbies, And you don't see all the 8U, 10U, 12U championship trophies that are decorated in the lobbies like you see across in our country. But you do see pictures of Timo Solani, Sebastian Aho, Pake Arene, the top end games. So it's just a different developmental focus that they really don't care at the younger ages, 14 and below. Like, they're still ultra competitive, but they don't care about that championship at those younger age groups. And what we're talking about, players being skill deficient at certain areas, they'll hold nights where it's Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't matter. Players from multiple teams, different age groups can go out and work on their skills. You know what I mean? So they're constantly getting better that way and really taking a look. And at the highest levels for the high school age players, this is incredible. They actually have a deeper training where they work with their coaches, and they'll have it set up to say, okay, let's do a self-assessment. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then that player has to come back to that coach, show them a plan of this is what I'm good at, what I need to work on. And then that coach facilitates that coaching as they go out and work together in addition to their team practice. I thought it was phenomenal on and off ice. So it's just developing that athlete again and getting to Sean's trust in the process a little bit. I get it. It's easy for, I'm a former hockey director, so I understand the stresses of what parents want, what coaches want, and association leaders, and trying to blend that dynamic the right thing. But we always try to take a look at it and see, is whatever decision we're making, is it in the best interest of that player? Go ahead.
When you talk about Finland and Sweden, and I think it's kind of widely recognized as the best development models for hockey. Are you aware that they face the same kind of pressure from parents and
No question they do. We asked that because it's something everybody says, oh, it's only a country of 5.5 million people or whatever. We can't compare it to our model and things like that. Trust me, they have the same issues that we have, but where their leaders stand up, it's strong. So you would never go against what's going on, say Minnesota hockey or USA hockey, because they believe in that process. They talk about trusting the process. Those parents buy into what's going on because they see the rewards of that experience at those younger ages. So those players are moving on from year to year as they go through. So yeah, they definitely see that.
Yeah. How is their development model different than USA hockey at the lower levels? Like, is their focus more on?
Well, here's a mindset. I think it's pretty simple. So things that we would kind of go like, wow, this is kind of crazy. I was watching a 9U game, and it's essentially in Finland. They play all half ice. So I was watching the game. They play 4-on-4, both sides. I'm watching the game. All of a sudden, the other team's starting to kind of dominate a little bit. Next thing you know, the next shift, 5 players go out from the one team, 4 from the other. They start playing. I'm like, okay. A couple more shifts go along. Game got competitive. And it was kind of fun. Or back here, we would have parents screaming in the stands, what the heck, are you kidding me? Like, that's an unfair advantage. So it's that mindset a little bit more of, once again, what's best for the kids. It was going to be a blowout game. Coaches talked during the game, made that decision, and they allowed it to go through. It sounds so simple, but it really works and as they move forward. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I experienced just going over there is, I've always kind of had that mindset, like when I was coaching, like, okay, I'm gonna compete. It's me against this other team or this other association. But yeah, it is that. So it's that competition in the ring. But the minute you step outside, it's cooperation to make sure that we have the same players. We're trying to do the best thing. We all work for USA Hockey. Want to wear the emblem, okay, on your sweater someday. That's the kind of mindset we have. That's why you guys are here today, that you can learn a ton from what other people are doing in different associations to make sure it's the betterment for all kids. Because our game is great right now on the men's, the women's side. To see the things that are going on with the blind hockey, the sled hockey, it's simply amazing. It's so cool to see where our game's at right now.
Just to add, and on the finish exchange, Dan made the comment that you go into our arenas and you see the banners for the championship. So I made that observation, but to be fair, We also see in the arenas the pictures of the players that went on and succeeded at Division I hockey or in the pros at many of our arenas.
Yeah.
And so that's a cool thing that we're also doing. It's not so much about winning as important, but I think we do celebrate. I think the other thing that I took away
Well, look
from,
at the Excel too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool to see. I mean, like,
Yeah.
just one example.
Yeah, exactly. So we do celebrate those and advance as much and put them up. The other thing is I don't know that we do as good a job developing the athlete with off-ice athleticism. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of on-ice stuff, but the off-ice athleticism training and is.
And that's the culture, I think,
Yeah.
you know, of those countries from Sweden to Finland. I mean, when we go on vacation, we go down to Florida, right, sit on the beach. Well, when they go on vacation, they actually go to sport vacation. So they take their family and they'll teach them how to ski, how to play tennis, how to do everything. Like, it's pretty interesting. Part of their skating schools is pretty interesting watching this side of it, where they had kids out there. The parents were all engaged in the first couple of years of what's going on. So you have that community involvement and the parent. So it's a fun thing for them. And then in addition to that, it's that sporty culture that they promote, where before they assemble the kids, and they're asking the kids, hey, how many of you guys did activities today? How many of you guys went out and were doing skiing or playing other sports? And these little 6-year-old kids, pretty much 90% of them raise their hand that they're doing different things versus just being stagnant. Especially now the challenges that we face, where we're taking physical education out of their schools to some degree, depending on the states. Like, we have to make sure, and that's where they build in their movement activities. They want their kids, as they go through these weeks, essentially minimum of, you know, 20 hours of movement. That's hard to do in a week.
Super quick, because I know we have to go, but you're talking about building the athlete. Our association's discussing maybe getting rid of dry land during the season. Is that something that's...
Wow. That's all I have to say. Wow. It's critical.
Okay.
And it
the
is,
cost, I guess. It's not...
And this is something that...
They want to get rid of it?
Why is that? I think every coach should be able to, we have essentially cards that are so easy that we can use, playing cards, we can get you those.
Okay.
So easy that you can run those setups, basic stations. It's a critical component for the hockey player, that off-ice side of it. You get
during like the regular season.
Yes. No question.
Important thing that off-ice isn't just stick handling and shooting, but it's balance and coordination.
Right.
And core strength are the important things that you need to focus on the off-ice.
You said it right here, it's the culture, right? You're preparing that athlete. So even though at the younger ages you're building those ABCs, moving things forward, it's also that mindset that when that player is essentially 14, 15, it's expected, you know what I mean? Like, and that's something that they build in, getting back to the Finns and Swedes again. They don't just do an hour-long practice. They have it built in that the off-ice is the same amount of time, essentially, and they might spend that whole hour, but they're expected to be there for those 2 hours. That's practice. It's just not an hour on ice or whatever. And we have to find ways, even for the younger kids at 10 or 12 years, take 15, 20 minutes over a course of a year, than nothing if you're doing that once or twice a week. And it's something we start out early in the season with great ambitions, like we're going to do it, and then all of a sudden November rolls around, we're not going to do dry land today. You have to be able to do that, because that pays dividends as you move forward.
Not just for them, but for us, for the adults. We got to stay in motion too.
Yeah, that's right. We got to get close to wrapping up. You did have a question. I want to get you a question.
Me?
Yeah.
I had a statement.
Okay. And that was?
When she spoke on dry land.
Oh, okay.
I have
Dan,
one really quick point, which somehow we just didn't get to yet, but that is the academics of kids playing hockey. I have both my boys playing collegiate hockey. My son just got home last night from playing in Denmark for last year. Both these kids, I mean, in general, the onus as much as on the parents as on you as coaches to emphasize the importance of academics for these kids. You can't underestimate if a kid has a 3.0 versus a 3.6, their opportunities at the D1 and D3 level, the colleges they can get into with a better ACT that makes all the difference in the world. So do not let them forget the importance of academics.